Welcome to Money in the Air, the music podcast about neighboring rights, the royalties you earn from the public performance of your recordings and the business of music in general. Brought to you by IFR, the International Association for Artists and Rights Holders.
I'm Andrew, co-founder and chief royalty officer of Royalty.
Hi, I'm Gina Deacon. I work for Absolute Rights Management and I work with record labels and artists to ensure we claim the royalty income due to them.
I'm Stacey Haber and I'm from Inside Baseball Music Publishing.
Hey, welcome back to Money in the Air, the neighboring rights podcast brought to you by IFR, the International Association for Artists and Rights Holders. Guess what? Today we have artist questions, except it's a little skewed. We have label and publisher questions. Lukepolitz and Danny West from Come Play Records.
I do distribution and a bit of A&R for Come Play With Me. And Danny?
I run the publishing at Come Play With Me Records, and we are sub-published through Universal.
But they haven't done neighboring rights yet. So they're going to ask us a couple of questions.
So I work for an organisation in Leeds called Music Leeds, and they're set up solely to do neighbouring rights and publishing for upcoming artists.
Okay.
Stacey's hands are in the air right now.
Yes, I didn't know this. We've been, talking every week, at least once a week for how long now?
Essentially, we just got up-and-coming artists in the room and spoke about neighbouring rights and made them aware of it, signed them up, offered them 28-day rolling deal similar to Centric, that we collected all the publishing and neighbouring rights. And we did the administration for that.
And did you take them on the rights holder side and the performer side?
Both sides.
Brilliant. And did you tell them that if they don't register the rights holder side first, they'll never get paid? Yeah, baby. Good. Well, that's really, really good. So then, what do you want to ask us?
My question, mate, I had a very long dispute with an artist manager about when and how artists should be signed up to PRS and get their right of a song when they didn't, or they did write a melody that is the main part of the song.
Immediately, you shouldn't leave a writing session without it, even if it's on the back of a napkin, without those splits agreed. But that's publishing. We're talking about neighboring rights.
Instead publishing and neighboring rights.
Because publishing companies tend to be neighboring rights representatives. That's why. So, but I answered your question anyway.
Yeah.
Do you have a question about neighboring rights?
Yeah. I think
good.
Ultimately, I would love to know how we go about actually collecting the money from radios and TVs and stuff like that. So, how does that happen?
So it functions very similarly to music publishing. So you mentioned PRS. I'm just using that as a placeholder. It would be that you would sign up on behalf of your artist or the artist directly with PPL. Then PPL would then administer the licenses with the radio stations and whoever is broadcasting the performances of the sound recording. And then from there, PPL would then allocate the monies both to the rights holder side and then also to the artists and the non-featured artists.
And how does PPL get an accurate take on what's been played where? Do they have to trust the shops, the stores, every place, that the radio stations?
It's all supplied by reports. I mean, predominantly it's used the ISRC. It's very important that most societies use those codes to track the information, and it's logged on in terms of the usage. So generally speaking, yeah, the information is logged for radio usage and television usage. Otherwise, it's done on a percentage calculation, basically, in terms of the way an artist is rated is the best way of determining how the splits are made. I should say, going back to your question as to how the income is collected with the company Come Play With Me, did you say you have accounts with PPL and other collection societies, or do you just have an account with PPL?
PPL, yeah, all of them, to be fair.
Okay, cool. And do you log into their portal and register the repertoire that way?
As of me joining, no, not anymore. EMI does that. But prior to that, yes, that's what someone's job would have been.
EMI is the distributor for Come Play Records.
Yeah, EMI is now the distributor.
Ah, cool.
As
Okay,
for
so right, so you'll supply them with the data and then they'll log it and claim it accordingly. Okay, that's cool. As long as it's all being logged, then that's brilliant. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's Luke's job, to supply them with all the data, essentially.
Good. Good. So how big's the spreadsheet you're keeping?
Very, very big, unfortunately. Good. We use OpenPlay for our distribution. It's I think Universal's third-party portal.
Okay.
And so there's lots and lots of metadata to fill out and on the track level and the release level. So yeah, hopefully Danny has everything he needs now to get collecting, I guess.
Or to feed to EMI.
Yeah.
Question.
Yeah.
I've been doing PPL for a while. That doesn't go to mean I know everything what it means. What is the difference between a featured and a non-featured performer? Because when I sign up my compositions, I put myself as a featured.
Recordings.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Recordings. I put myself as a featured performer and a composer because that's what I've been told
Right,
is the
yeah,
way
good.
to do it. What is the difference between those three things?
There are very different pools of income that get divvied out for featured and non-featured performers. So the schema is that basically the intention here is to make sure that all parties, all contributors to a sound recording are accounted for. So if you are a featured performer, then you have a deal with your label or you are the primary artist as seen on Spotify, but there's a collection of musicians and background vocalists that supplement the recordings. And so each one of the societies have a specific pool of income that gets allocated to non-featured performers as well.
And what it's called at PPL is contracted featured performer, whoever signed the contract with whoever's releasing the recordings. Then there's other featured performers, like if you have a guest artist or a duet. And then there's non-featured, which is all your session players and background vocalists, or the pizza guy who came in and you left his voice on the recording.
So how far down that, did you say, I guess it gets divvied up by the importance of the people on the track. How important is a composer versus a non-featured?
Composers don't count here. It's only people who made an audible contribution, who made a sound on the recording. Composer goes to the publishing. They ask who the composer is because they want to be able to match it with PRS and MCPS for the blanket license for sync, but it has no bearing on the royalty for neighboring rights.
Okay.
Contracted featured and other featureds will get the lion's share of the performer share, and the non-featureds will get a smaller share. Mostly that means that featureds get more money, but sometimes it can go the other way. If the featured is an orchestra with 100 people and you have one non-featured bass player, that bass player is going to make more money. But that's the way the cookie crumbles. You can't do anything about it. It is what it is.
So if I could I give you a live example?
Yes.
There's a track that I made myself. I self-produced it and I also sang on it.
Yes.
So would I register that twice? As it not the recording? Would I register myself twice as a featured performer, or only once as vocals and a programmer, or would I just be a programmer? Yes.
Yeah,
Once.
definitely. That's quite important because PPL will only pay for one role. You're not going to get anything more from PPL, but some of the societies pay out for 2 or 3. If you're mandated with PPL for worldwide collection, you need to log all your contributions. For somewhere like Germany, that will pay 3 different roles out. So it's very important that you list every single one. A little bit tedious maybe, but worthwhile in the long run.
Yeah, okay.
But PPL won't let you register as featured and non-featured. They'll only let you register all your roles as a featured artist. So vocals, electric guitar, bass guitar, keyboards, percussion.
Yeah, so it'd be Danny West vocals, Danny West studio programmer.
Yes,
and then,
all under contracted featured performer.
interesting.
Yeah, yeah.
Where does like a remixer fall into those?
So remixers are only entitled to neighboring rights if they made a new sound,
Okay,
not if they just changed what was already there.
okay, that's useful to know.
What if they've manipulated a sound that was already in there to sound like a new sound?
I'm going to say no, because generally speaking, a remixer isn't an eligible role. I will look into it and confirm that for you, but my black and white saying no, because categorically it's an existing recording that you're not actually adding anything to, you're just changing it around, remixing it,
Yeah,
and
the
not bringing
caveat
anything to the party.
Yeah, the caveat would be if the remixer took, say, the guitar track and repurposed it as a trumpet track, then you could put them down as the trumpet player, as a session non-featured. But if you put him down as a remixer, no money. Yeah?
It's all, you've just got to think so carefully about the categories that you choose. And then when the categories, as Stacey mentioned, contracted featured artist, non-featured artist, or the other option, which is other featured artist, got to think about that because that is really important. I've seen so many times a contracted featured artist being claimed as non-featured and losing out a lot. So you've really got to get that right. And then you've got to think carefully about the roles that you play within those categories to make sure that you list the roles correctly as well. It is a little bit of a minefield, but once you know what you're doing, it's you're up and running.
If I was a remixer on a track and I listed myself as a featured artist and as a trumpet player because I'd remixed the guitar track to sound like a trumpet, would I be taking someone else's royalties away from them by doing that? Okay.
And if you did that, I'd go fraud.
Yeah, fair enough.
You're non-featured. You're non-featured.
Yeah.
Okay.
You have to evidence it quite often as well. It's not just a case that you can submit the claims and they are checked by various societies as well. Yeah, otherwise we'd be seeing a lot more of that. So definitely not. It's not an easy claim, basically.
Yeah, top tip. If you are going to try and claim neighboring rights as the remixer trumpet player, make sure that you're listed in the credits on Spotify or on Discogs or All Songs, whatever. There has to be tangible evidence.
Yeah, I was going to ask about, like, when I'm distributing releases, we have like primary artists and like secondary roles, but there aren't featured artists and non-featured artists in the same way. And like, you can only, well, there are, but you can only have one primary artist. So if Danny producing the track, he couldn't be the primary artist; it'd only be the vocalist or the, you know, on that track. So it's slightly separate, I guess. But how does that translate into?
Producers are different. Let's take them away for the moment. Let's say that your primary artist is a band. Each of the members of the band that signed the recording agreement are contracted featured artists.
Yeah.
The producer needs something from PPL called an eligible studio producer form.
Okay.
From Sound Exchange, it's called the letter of direction.
Yeah. For
Sound Exchange, the primary artist, the contracted featured artist, will determine what percentage of their own royalties they're giving to the producer. At PPL, does a producer with an eligible studio producer form automatically go into the non-featured pool?
Generally speaking, yes, unless they've got another role, in which case if they've got another role, then they'll be a contracted featured artist as well. But if, if they're a main artist, they'll be a contracted. And if they're a session player as well, like keyboards, then they'll be a non-featured.
And you'll usually know based on how it's released. So if the released artist name is ABC song by Danny West, then that's that. If the producer is more prominent than whoever the vocalist is, because they've just hired in to sing for the session. If it's ABC song by Lady, produced by Danny West, then it goes back into the non-featured. Right. So the title of the song and the named artist will also play a part in who gets what.
Cool. Yeah, that makes sense. I just had a similar situation where a remix artist wanted to be credited as a primary.
It can happen. If you get remixed by Nile Rodgers, it's going to happen.
Yeah.
So, but if you get remixed by me, not going to happen.
International clients will go direct in the United States and then elect a PPL to do the rest of the world outside of the US. I'm only saying that because the US is a very big market with, even though we don't collect on traditional radio stations here, still pretty big because of SiriusXM and Pandora. So they collect about $1 billion every single year. And once you get like just subtle nuances with how the accounting and the letters of direction and, you know, the way that non-featured artisan who pays that, it's really not that complicated.
So what Andrew's saying is, say to PPL, we want you to collect worldwide, excluding the US, and then go directly to Sound Exchange in the US. Yeah. And then when you can get your head around it, say, PPL, I want you to collect worldwide, excluding the US and Germany, and then go direct to Germany, to GVL for Germany, if that's a big market for you.
Yeah, but I think my brain can't wrap it around. Is PPL talking to Songshare in order to get the naming rights in America?
Yes.
So does everyone in America play direct to Songshare and then the Sound Exchange, and then that goes to PPL?
Yes.
The portion of it goes to PPL?
Yes.
And how is that all worked out?
If somebody has a worldwide mandate with Sound Exchange, then PPL is going to send Sound Exchange artists that are directly affiliated with PPL. And so the exchanges happen that way.
Exclusive licensee on like PPL or neighboring rights. What happens 5 years and a day? Does that automatically...
So what you're saying is if you register a recording and somebody's claiming for it, will they automatically give up those rights and transfer them over?
Yeah, at the end of the license.
Unlikely. I tell you why. Yeah, no, I'm just being honest from what I've seen. Most people register the repertoire with no end date. So they'll submit with a start date, but they won't submit with an end date. And that then continues to carry on rolling until somebody steps in and says, hold on a minute, XYZ company have been claiming these royalties for the last 10 years and the rights ended, 10 years ago. You'll get a little bit backdated with a new rights holder, or if it's yourselves directly, you need to keep a handle on it, basically. You need to be watching it and cataloguing when the rights end and making sure you step in. And if it's not end dated, reclaiming it.
What about if there is an end date and the end date comes and passes? Does the money go into the black box or does it still go to the old representative?
If there's an end date, then theoretically it should, well, probably will go into the black box. If nobody else steps forward and claims it, PPL cannot continue to pay somebody who has held their hands up and say, this is the end date and I don't claim after this date. But there isn't anybody else to pay.
Andrew, is it the same at Sound Exchange?
I have to check with them to see what their policies are, but I would say when in doubt, it's better to be proactive about managing what they're doing instead of like trusting them to manage what is going on. Like they have, I don't know, Sound Exchange has 650,000 members and counting And they still have a large amount of monies that they, it's being withheld in suspense because it's not claimed. So they have a lot of stuff to do. But yeah, theoretically, what should happen is they should withhold that payment. But I can't confirm to be exact on what's happening in those instances if there
And
isn't a date.
is that more of a moral thing? So like
No, it's
because
contractual.
when I signed people's rights up to PPL, I did sign them up like till 2020, like 2099.
Yeah.
So like, does that ever become a legal thing? Even though we have a contract that says the right for us to exploit this composition is like 5 years, 6 years, and when we've put 2099, like, is that a conflict or?
Well, I'm guessing that your agreement says 5 years, and at the end of the 5 years, it will roll over until terminated.
Yeah.
So that's why you put a faraway end date. But if you had a flat 5 years, then you would put that end date. Well, you put the end of the retention period as a thing. But if it's a rollover, you don't know when it's going to end, so you can't put an actual date. So that's what I mean by contractual.
Yeah.
But what you don't want is you don't want to let the payments lapse and go into the black box because you won't get them back. Or
Alternatively, go to the prior distributor or administrator of the royalties. I mean, that's honestly typically how it happens. Even if there is a set term date with a agreement, if there's no redirection that took place because another deal didn't happen, the monies will just continue to flow through to the prior distributor or administrator. So it's up. The onus is not on the old administrator to update the records. It's on the new administrator to assert their rights over the catalog. That's typically the order of operations.
Cool. Thank you, guys. Any more questions?
Yeah.
Oh.
So I love this. So obviously, I feel like the world knows Taylor Swift sold her catalog. What happened to her neighboring rights? The sale of that catalog.
So, first of all, let's rephrase that for pedantry. She didn't sell her catalog.
Yeah,
her label sold it, without offering it to her. Okay. So,
apologies.
That's okay. So, whoever's recording, this is why the ISRC number is so important. Whichever ISRC number has the public performance is the one that gets paid the neighboring rights. So, she has re-recorded all those tracks now. Yeah. And because she owns the publishing, the old ISRC numbers are never going to see public performance again because she'll deny it on the publishing side. So it will always be her new ISRC numbered recordings.
Okay. I had a quick question about samples.
There's no quick question about samples.
Me and my friend run an electronic label and need to know about how to navigate neighboring rights on sampling, basically.
Easy.
Okay.
Whatever you used of the recording that was sampled, those artists get part of the neighboring rights as a featured performer. Do not let Sound Exchange or PPL tell you they're non-featured. They are featured.
And to what degree are you defining like a sampled artist? Like if it was a kick drum taken from a garage track 25 years ago.
Yeah. That drummer gets it.
Okay.
And there's even an argument for the producer if the producer was getting neighboring rights on the original.
Oh. And how far can that chain go back? Because I guess like
forever. Do the right thing. Sorry, I better stop answering. You guys take this because I'm getting a little too angry.
6 years. As an artist, you can backclaim for 6 years. So
no, he means how old does the recording have to be before you don't have to pay for it?
Okay.
It's public. Whenever it goes into public domain. So if a recording rather, it goes into public domain, then it's fine. But how far back? I mean, just say 100 years. Whenever something is now in public domain status. You can use something freely, but other than that, if it's a copyrighted material, it's not in public domain. That doesn't matter if it's a sample on a sample on a sample. Like the trail needs to be accounted for.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was trying to say. Rather than how many years it needs to go back. Like if I sample from a garage track from the 90s and they've sampled a drum kick from the 70s, does it just keep knocking back on the?
Yeah, that's exactly right. I know it's a headache, and that's why Stacey's such a simple question, short answer to samples. But yeah, if it's a derivative work on a derivative work, like you need to, whatever the original splits were agreed on the original sample, and then if that is done, then those hold true, and it just keeps like, do you see what I mean?
And as long as I'm on my soapbox, if you use AI and you train it on somebody's old drum track, that drummer gets your neighboring rights.
Wow.
But for instance, Luke's example, let's take a 90s track all the way back to 1920. How would the estate for that 1920 producer know his kick drum is in the 2023? I know it's his prerogative to register the backlog, but like
not prerogative, it's his absolute duty to not be in breach of copyright
Yeah.
and to come clean as soon as possible. But I think your question is, if he doesn't,
Yeah.
how are they going to find out? And the
And-
answer is they'll always find out.
And they have a right to then take the track down.
Yeah.
It's not
Absolutely
even
not.
about that. Like you would, I mean, it was a case with Eminem. Like he didn't clear my name, and then I don't want to go back. Functions very same thing. Copyright is copyright. So if you don't clear your samples, they can literally take your copyright. First of all, and second of all, there's like settlement fees included in that. So it's just a very expensive thing to play.
Makes a lot more sense why some producers are going like 100% hardware now. Just like no sampling, just only like synthesizers.
So in the case of Splice,
Yeah.
where does Splice land in this argument? If I pay my money for a quote unquote royalty free
Mm-hmm.
drum loop,
Mhm.
do I owe the original composer of the drum loop a
Not the
copyright?
composer, the performer. So it depends on the license that you buy from Splice. And you'll also notice when you read the license that it is taking neighboring rights. They do want to be credited, that it is a limited license. It's limited to something like 250 or 500,000 streams. And then you have to pay again. So you're better off using something like TrackLib.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I've used chocolate.
Okay.
Okay.
Here's the thing about sampling. I happen to love sampling because I love old music and new music, and having them together is great. If you come to me to clear a sample before it's released, I might give it to you for next to nothing or for 20% or whatever. If I catch you and come after you, which I've done for many clients, we're taking it all 100%.
So it's better to go first.
Yeah. Yes.
Is there no foot to be stood on? Like if Luke's producer didn't know. Do you know what I mean? Like you knew it came from a 90s track and you knew the 90s track came from a 70s track, but you didn't know where the 70s track originated. Like you genuinely didn't know that.
That's it. Yeah, I understand. That's very frustrating because it's record keeping is very difficult to come by sometimes, especially as you get older. But do your best, document your diligence, and I would say that's the best that you can do.
But Stacey will come to my rights
Yeah.
again.
It's like if you buy a sample pack from Bandcamp and it's got a breakbeat on it that you've never heard in your life, and it's like super rare, and you can't find the like origin of it.
Well, ask Bandcamp.
Yeah, fair enough.
It shouldn't be on Bandcamp then. Like
You just read the license from whatever you take.
Okay.
If it's just on Bandcamp and you take a sample without it actually being a licensed sample from them, you're stealing it and you know it.
Yeah, fair enough.
Okay. All right. Just saying. Please come back again. This
Oh, we'd
was
love to.
brilliant.
Yeah, I've got more questions.
Okay. Good. Stay tuned, everybody, for part 2. Thank you, Danny. Thank you, Luke.
Thanks for having us.
And thank you for listening. And remember, if you have questions, email us at info@ifar.co.uk. That's IAFAR.co.uk. Have a great week.